encourage you all to follow your dreams and to work as hard as you can to get to those. But don't forget that there are a multitude of infinite options of careers in this world. And then somehow certain decisions that are out of your control might guide you in a certain direction. And I want young people to be open to the fact that, what their end goal is might be a little different than what, when they were 17 in high school, they thought their end goal would be.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the TAKAGAI family. If you're new to this channel, my name is Taka, and through this platform, I encourage college students to cultivate a positive growth mindset alongside with guest speakers who come from all walks of life. And as always, today I'm super excited to have Étienne, Haarpaintner, all the way from Switzerland. He's currently a master's student at EHL. And yeah, he has a lot of expertise in the area of hospitality and hospitality management and so on. So hopefully we get to hear a lot about his experience, his views towards some of the core skills around leadership and teamwork. And so Étienne, thanks for your time today and welcome to the channel.
Thanks, Taka. Yo, I'm so pumped to be here. Good morning or afternoon or evening to everyone out there. And I'm really excited to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, you all suited up, and you told me earlier, but this is your costume, right, for uni?
That's right. Yeah. So everyone here, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., anytime you're on campus, you have to be in a full suit with the tie and everything, shoes, socks, all matched up. So wow. That's me right now. Yeah.
And I'm guessing you're sort of used to that, or how was that?
Yeah, so I mean, depending on where I've worked, most recently I was at maybe a more casual restaurant, so it wasn't like this, but I have worked in 5-star hotels. So that's, I have a growing collection of ties and long formal socks. So
yeah. Awesome. And just to give everyone some context, how Étienne and I met, this was we met back last year, so last summer when I was interning in Hamburg in Germany. It turns out that we were out of nowhere, we were roommates. I thought I was the only person living in the apartment, but then the next day, I think I hear people walking like next door, and then I took a peek and it turns out it was Étienne. And so effectively we were roommates for about one month and a bit, I would say.
I think so,
yeah. And so that's how we met, basically. And since then, yeah, we connected very well during that 1 month. It was a very short period of time, but he's taught me a lot. I learned a lot from him, and we hung out a bunch in the area of Hamburg specifically. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was quite a summer we had. Yeah, what an apartment. That was what a mix.
Exactly. Yeah. We also had 2 other roommates, which actually I'm hoping to ask. I don't know if I will, but to have them on the channel at some point as well, that would be quite dope.
They must have great stories.
Yeah.
I know one of them would be happy to talk for hours about that.
100%. Yeah. But anyways, today, I think, Étienne, let's start off with sort of what got you into hospitality, that sort of area.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of a backstory because that wasn't my original goal.
Gotcha.
So I went to university at McGill in Montreal, planning to go to medical school after. So I was doing all my science prerequisites. My mom's a doctor as well, and my grandfather as well. So I didn't feel forced, but it was a bit of an expectation, kind of.
Yeah.
But I was really enthusiastic about that. And so kind of 2 big things happened towards the end of my university degree. My mother passed away from cancer quite young, actually. And she was really kind of the support and the rock for all of this. So that was a moment of reflection as well. I mean, I was still very enthusiastic about medical school and I didn't want to give up on that yet. So that was a tricky time, but I was doing my applications and I did all the MCAT, the exams. And after a series of interviews, I didn't get a positive response. It's, a very competitive field.
Absolutely.
So I had graduated and was working in Los Angeles just as a receptionist at a doctor's office, a friend of my family's, and kind of reevaluating, am I going to try to reapply again, maybe do a master's in a health-related field and reapply? That would maybe better my chances. maybe apply internationally. Perhaps there's easier programs to get into in different countries.
Yeah.
And around this time, actually, the doctor that I was working for at that office, he had worked at a resort when he was around my age. And he said, you know, I see you love the patients here and you're really friendly with them at the reception. Have you ever thought about hospitality or the service industry?
Mm.
And I kind of started thinking about that and was like, you know, I didn't really, but actually looking at myself and the feedback I've gotten from friends and things like that, I think that might be a really good fit.
Wow.
So
Okay.
that kind of inspired me as I was going to hold off on medical applications, which ended up never materializing, but thankfully, and then applied to Club Med, which is like a big French resort company.
Yeah.
And so it was accepted there, and that really kind of took off. And it was nice because I could travel as well as meet new people. And, you know, it was kind of a mix of a lot of the things that I really liked in life, like traveling, new cultures, new people,
Gotcha.
but also getting paid to do that at the same time. And with some of these big companies, there's ways that you can get promoted and get relocated. So I started in Florida location. And then I moved to 1 year there, then Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic, which was beautiful, you know, always kind of in the reception side, kind of moving up. And then my last location there was in the Maldives, actually.
My days. Yeah.
So beautiful resort there overlooking some water villas. And that was my first supervisor position. So I was leading a team there as well. No, that was a bit, and then moved back to Europe. That's where I met you, working for the travel agency, which I realized was not really what I liked. Then back to a hotel in France and a bit of restaurants, and going back to school now because realizing this is really what I like and what I'm passionate about, and what I'm good at, I think. So that's kind of my intro to that.
Yeah, so I'm really glad that you've been able to find sort of what you're really good at, as well as your passion, which is awesome. I hope I find that someday as well, sometime soon. But what goes on in your head every time you put yourself into these new environments? Like how do you go about it mentally?
Yeah, I mean, so that is tricky, you know, coming to you know, the apartment and meeting you for the first time, you know. I've changed roommates a lot and I have a new roommate, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, building relationships maybe quicker. I've been forced to try to establish friendships more quickly than before. You know, I think when I was a bit younger, maybe a bit not fearful of people, but you keep a bit of a distance in the beginning,
Right.
because you don't want to get taken advantage of, or you don't want to be lied to, or whatever, you know. I mean, which is smart, which is understandable. However, I find that, you know, without being too naive or foolish, but kind of shortening that time and maybe treating them like a friend, you know, depending on the context. But, you
Right.
know, meeting you and kind of on the first impression thinking, this guy seems really nice. We're both kind of similar here. We're young and you were a student. I was maybe just starting a new job. So I shortened that time of the kind of the distance of let me get to know this person first, and kind of treating you as a friend, you know, without, you know, letting myself getting taken advantage or whatever. You have to be careful
Right.
in certain situations. But realizing that we're all quite similar, and my insecurities or your insecurities or her insecurities, you know, we're all kind of in this together. And, you know, and I think really listening has been able to build relationships quite quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes I think in conversations, everyone's trying to get their side of the story in, and you're not even really listening to the person in front of you.
Yeah.
So taking a second to really stop, being quiet, listening, asking follow-up questions, sometimes private or intimate, as many of our conversations were.
Yeah.
But I've been kind of impressed at how willing people are to share that with people that really care. And when they know that you care and you're listening, I think that can build friendships in a short amount of time, kind of, which is what I've been forced to kind of learn through all my travels.
That's great. Yeah, it's great you mentioned you brought up listening skills, and when you say you meet someone and then you not just you kind of trust them and you kind of assume they're your friend from the beginning. Is that kind of how you go about it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think, you know, they say innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah, yeah.
Perhaps yeah, I don't want to encourage anyone to be naive or getting taken advantage of. So you have to be smart in that. But
Sure.
yeah, you know, I meet someone and kind of treat them almost like they're already a friend.
That's
Um,
crazy.
and
Yeah.
I find that they're receptive to that, so they treat me like a friend, and it kind of builds on itself.
Yeah, and I want to add on to that that people love talking about themselves and their experiences, and obviously everyone loves sharing about who they are. So when Etienne mentions having good listening skills to shorten that period to get to know someone, it's a really important skill that you can actually develop over time. And I used to be a terrible listener. I think I'm still working on it. But in terms of like active listening, I think it helps you in the long run, whether that's building relationships with friends or in a professional environment. So hopefully the listeners can take a couple of things already out here. But Etienne, I know going off sort of that listening skills, I'm sure you do a lot of that, you know, in hospitality and facing customers. Talk to us
Yeah.
about what's the most important thing that you keep in mind when you face customers in specifically hospitality?
Yeah. So specifically hospitality, like that client interaction, I think there's three kind of key components of that.
Okay.
And I'll end with the most important in my opinion. So the first dimension is the aesthetic dimension. So you see I'm wearing a suit and tie. That
Yeah.
might be appropriate for, you know, a five-star hotel. For a tattoo parlor in Hamburg, that's definitely not appropriate. So the person has to kind of look the part, you know?
Right.
So in
Right.
terms of the aesthetic appearance, you want to kind of align yourself with whatever environment you're in. So I think that in hospitality and client service is very important. Um, Secondly is the professional dimension. So you have to know what you're talking about. You have to have the skills, you know, to be able to do that. And the resources in front of you, is the computer going to work to make the reservation, things like that. So all these professional things that you're able to do what is asked of you in this situation, whether it's, you know, if we go back to the tattoo thing, the being able to, you know, provide a certain service
Mhm.
efficiently and well, whether it's hospitality or really any industry. So
Right.
that professional dimension is really important, but you know, those first two are still kind of expected. You're not really gonna make a lasting impression. You know, no one remembers a great waiter at a restaurant because they brought the food out correctly. You know,
Mhm.
that's the professional, that's expected. You know, that's what you're paying for the money. So I
Gotcha.
think the most important, this last dimension, is going to be the human dimension. You know,
Mm.
and that's really where you're going to make an impact with these soft skills. You know, you have to read the audience, right? So, you know, being joking and high-fiving in a hospitality luxury setting would not be appropriate.
Gotcha.
um, but really showing your care, and you're really, that person in front of you is the most important person. And you're really, you know, you notice something like, oh, I noticed you arrived from Los Angeles, I'm actually also from Los Angeles. So you incorporate like a little human touch to this, what could be a robotic interaction, like a check-in or, you know, some type of transaction,
Mhm.
that maybe you wouldn't need to have a human dimension on that. But bringing in a little touch, showing a bit of your authentic personality. You know, you have to tone it down depending on the situation, of course.
Yeah.
um, but I think really touching somebody emotionally, and I think that's really what leaves a lasting impression. That's when, you know, I get the TripAdvisor review with my name. Wow, the guy at the reception was great. You know, that's
Mhm.
not because I, you know, made a reservation the way I was supposed to. That's
Right.
because I remembered his daughter's, you know, stuffed animal's name on the third day, and, you know, wish them well, you know. So that little human touch, I think people really appreciate, especially now when everything's contactless and you can do so many things online now. I
Mhm.
think that's my opinion in hospitality, that's become of utmost importance, is this human dimension.
That's fantastic. So you mentioned, you know, you need to look good, look part. You have to be able to do your job. So kind of competency, I'm guessing, is super
Yeah,
important.
absolutely.
And then the last sort of human touch of that emotional connection with your customers. But I feel like when you mention, you know, you add that human touch and when you build that initial connection, sometimes, from my opinion, it could either go really well or they might be a little bit receptive to, you know, some comments that you make. So how do you go about
Yeah.
serving difficult customers, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so that's you know, I think it goes down to experience and emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
I, I of course I've made mistakes and maybe was a bit too friendly when I should have been maybe a bit more professional. So that's, we're all, you know, a learning work in progress. Um, yeah, the difficult customers. So we want to maintain all those things. Obviously, I'm not gonna, you know, ask them about their flight or whatever. If they're upset at me in front of me, you know, I have to respect the situation in front of me.
Sure.
You know, and I've heard very, what seemed to me silly, like there was no Nutella at the breakfast bar or something, you know, and people get really upset about that. so I want to try to get down to the deeper need behind this person's emotional kind of status and what's going on with that. So,
Yeah.
you know, taking their concern to heart, to really, again, actively listening, giving a follow-up of, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is when we're going to get back to you on this, you know, being very concrete with the details, a certain level of calmness,
Hmm.
and understanding, be like, I'm so sorry. I totally understand. I understand the frustration. We're going to do the best we can to make sure that this gets resolved. So a certain confidence, assertiveness, but really respecting their situation. And you never know what's going on. You know, that person with the Nutella in the morning may have had a huge fight with their wife, you know, just an
Yeah.
hour before that you're not even aware of. So I know that there's something underlying when it's a small thing that really triggers somebody. So really showing my professionalism, and really following up and making sure that something is seen from A to Z all the way through.
Gotcha. I think that those interactions that you have and the idea of respecting the other person's individual, trying to put yourself in the other person's shoes, acknowledging the fact that you're not gonna know how they're gonna feel exactly is a great way to, I think, show them that at least you're trying to make that effort to care, and that you're showing this idea of empathy. I think it's really important. And
That's exactly true. Yeah.
I'm sure when you work, in hospitality, teamwork is a big thing when you're trying to serve customers. You have to coordinate different things, whether you're events manager and so on. You work with different people. And based on your experience, you've moved across different countries, different companies, and different teams. How do you sort of adapt yourselves in new teams to become like an effective as a whole?
Yeah, that's a great question because, as you said, different cultures have different team dynamics.
Sure.
I think especially you're Japanese, so I think I remember working with a Japanese girl, and there was maybe something that bothered her, and that I would have expected that she would have said that to me in the beginning, but perhaps part of the culture is a certain respect that you don't vocalize your thing until the very end.
Yeah.
And so I've had to get used to that and really trying to do a constant communication back and forth because somebody that's more timid or comes from a culture where there's really hierarchical respect may not feel comfortable voicing that in the beginning. So it's
Mhm.
really about communication in these teams, you know,
Yeah.
and that word gets thrown around a lot. But I think in my experience, effective leadership, it's been about, I think, authenticity and transparency. So
Mhm.
when I say authenticity, meaning, okay, we have a vision that we want to do,
Right.
whatever that is. In my case, it's been, making sure the customer gets the absolute best experience possible. So being authentic, that they know that I'm also going for that vision as well. You know, my tasks might be different than their tasks, but we have an overarching vision, a mission, and I'm doing it genuinely, authentically with everything that, that I can to get to this vision. Because I've
Gotcha.
had bosses where I felt that they didn't take the vision seriously, but they were asking me to do it.
Mm.
And that created a bit of a disconnect, I thought. And then the transparency, so constant evaluation. This is what's been going well. This has not been going well. These are how we're going to be measured. Do you have the tools in front of you to be able to get the job done, being transparent? We need this. Okay, I'm going to work on getting you the proper equipment to do this. So a certain level of transparency within the team and the leadership, I think has helped teams perform at their best.
Yeah, authenticity and transparency. I think transparency is definitely important. Making sure that everyone knows where the team is going, what's the vision, and as well as understanding what role each person plays so
Yeah,
that you can coordinate very well and be effective as a team.
so
So
important.
I think exactly the great teams, I think, definitely have those two core themes around them. But when it comes to poor teams, let's say, that teams that don't perform as effectively as these high performing teams, what do you think sort of
Yeah.
is the root cause, let's say?
Yeah, I think similar to those two words as authenticity and transparency, the opposite of that would be a certain level of confusion We didn't really have the guidance. We didn't know where we were going. There was no feedback. So what I was doing, I wasn't sure if it was what I was supposed to be doing or not supposed to be doing. So
Yeah.
this level of confusion, and you kind of end up not giving your best or performing your best because you're not sure what you're really supposed to be doing. And then with authenticity, if I don't see a commitment from my leader and they are really embodying the vision, perhaps, that they're not present or whatever it is, I don't feel, why should I work towards this goal if my leader is not working towards that goal?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so, with the confusion and a bit of not distrust, but of, unsure about really the motivations. Are they just doing this because their supervisor said, okay, you need to tell your team to do this? Or is my leader really passionate about what he or she just told us?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the point that you mentioned when you say you kind of get confused whether you're doing well or doing not, I think that sort of revolves around sort of feedback, right? Getting feedback from the
Absolutely.
manager. How do you give good constructive feedback?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I mean, and I'm still working on doing that.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's, we learn like, the sandwich method where you go good, less good, and then good at the end.
Interesting.
So all those are good. I think the vocabulary you choose, the way you word things are really important. Because some people, let's say, if you say you did this wrong or you did that, they get very defensive and they're less likely to be on board with you at the end of that constructive criticism.
Sure.
So you're kind of, making judgments based on what they've done. So I found that going in the reverse order, starting either with how I felt or the result, and then linking that back towards that individual. So I feel let's see, from my perspective, the results this year were lower. A certain change that was done was that you did this, or, starting with the result that's very concrete and then linking that back to perhaps the performance or something that one of the team members did. I think they're able to make the connection from their action to the result. It's a bit clearer for them, and there's less of an immediate blame game, so to speak, on their action. So in that way, they're less immediately defensive, and perhaps more willing and open to making changes and improving things. And I think that goes for personal relationships as well. Instead of saying, you don't respect me or you make me feel like shit or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't feel valued when you don't say good night to me before going to sleep, or I really appreciate when you ask me how my day is, and bringing the focus on you and your feelings, it's less accusatory to the other person. And I felt that my critiques have passed better in situations where I've been able to word that better.
Interesting. So how one should be careful how you sort of phrase and frame the content of the feedback so that the particular person you're talking to is able to understand where you're coming from, as well as giving them concrete context. By starting with the result, it allows them to better internalize what's going on and what they could have done better. Is that kind
Exactly.
of
Wow,
gotcha?
you're a great listener, Taka. Yeah.
I try.
Yeah, that's that's kind of been my experience and what I've learned in that department.
Gotcha. And I want to kind of go back to when we met last year. I'm very personally curious, but when you sort of meet someone out of the blue for the very first time, we briefly talked about this already, but how did you sort of provide me with that trust when we first met? Because I was a complete stranger to you. But we lived next door,
Yeah, that's we were put in a situation that you're not often put in, a stranger
Yeah,
that you're now sharing the same space.
true.
So it's very important that first interaction goes well.
Yeah.
Yeah, giving your trust. I think, little things that have helped me. For example, I remember going to a place, I was leaving that first day, and I had just met my new roommate, and I was going to the grocery store, and I asked them, do you need anything from the grocery store? It was like just a little question like that. And then that person, said no. I mean, they normally say no, there's nothing. But just the fact that I was thinking about them and the respect, and that's something that you would do to a friend normally. Oh, do you need me to pick you up something from the grocery? And I think that created kind of a certain level of respect and trust between myself and that person. So yeah, and it's hard to give real solid, concrete recommendations because each friendship, each relationship is so different and unique.
Yeah.
That you can't, you have to try to, each situation needs to be adapted to. And I could feel from you gave me a big smile in the beginning. All those little things really count. Is it a good handshake?
Yeah.
Is it kind of quiet and okay, hi, and you close your door and you go back to your room? Or it's like, oh, hey, where are you from? I was also having trouble finding an apartment in Hamburg. How did you find this place? Yeah, kind of. I think that comes to me naturally in hospitality.
For sure.
But I think I definitely feel more comfortable with someone that takes interest into my life.
Yeah. I think it's a great point. You mentioned the small things really matter. I think when
Absolutely.
people think of building relationships, some people might think there's some sort of, I don't know, magical recipe that where you can get to know someone and fully trust them 100% for every single person with this recipe. But I feel, yeah, I totally agree that these small, very micro interactions that you have with the handshake, with the eye contact, do you look them in the eyes when you talk and stuff like this,
Yeah.
is it, I think over time, you can build that trust, is how I felt as well when I interact with people.
Yeah, I think even when it comes to when do you first realize that you love your girlfriend or your boyfriend? There's not
Yeah.
maybe a certain moment, but it's this series of small interactions that they wished you a good day every single day, or
Mhm.
or said you looked handsome when you really didn't feel handsome, or like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
little, and then wow, I really love this person, and that in the relationships, I think that counts, I would say, more than the big holiday once a year that you go to the fancy place or whatever. It's the day in, the day out, the compassion, the warmth that you give, whether it's romantic or not. Just I think those really count in gaining someone's trust.
Totally. And I can see why you're going to be great in hospitality.
Oh, thanks, brother. Yeah, I'm turning all red.
Uh, the room's just warm.
Yeah, must be. Oof.
I kind of want to transition into give sort of advice from your personal experiences that you've had so far with the extensive, traveling across the globe, meeting different individuals from different backgrounds.
Mhm.
But you've studied, in Canada and McGill, and now in Switzerland, very diverse. What advices would you give to college students right now who are sort of unsure about their career path?
Yeah, that's a great question, and again, I think it's a balance between. So I think it's definitely important to have a plan. My plan was to go to medical school, for example, and I was working, my ass off to get to that.
Yeah.
Um, but then also perhaps being open to life, presenting different opportunities, different doors may open. So I'm not saying, you should, sit on the couch and do nothing and something's going to come to you, have a
Yeah.
plan and go for it. But don't be so, tunnel visioned that you're
Mhm.
not open to seeing new opportunities. Because I think we all, and college is such a competitive place. Everyone wants to go to law school or doctor or do a PhD or, big engineer. And those are all great aspirations. I encourage you all to follow your dreams and to work as hard as you can to get to those. But don't forget that there are a multitude of infinite options of careers in this world. And then somehow certain decisions that are out of your control might guide you in a certain direction. And I want young people to be open to the fact that what their end goal is might be a little different than what when they were 17 in high school they thought their end goal would be.
Mm.
Open to that. And your first job is not going to be your dream job. I think it rarely is, especially now. So, and I think people have this idea that oh, if I love my job, then it's going to give me passion and energy. So this first job, maybe you don't love it. But if you turn that around, let's bring your passion, bring your energy to this job. And I found that I loved my job more because I brought my own internal passion, my own internal energy um, to this maybe less than ideal job. And then that maybe transformed into something else. There's perhaps a contact I made from that. You know, I'm not saying to stay in that job forever, but don't let your job dictate how passionate about how proud you are of your performance and really doing the best you can. And all of these little things add up, and doors will open. And you know, and if you want something so badly, sometimes life has a way of, you know, not giving it to you. And sometimes I've been so afraid of something happening, you know, like, oh no, I really don't want to get a speeding ticket today. And then the speeding ticket happened, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, sometimes letting life, don't be so fearful of one thing, because I kind of felt that I've attracted those things into my life. And then wanting something so badly, a certain result, you know, like you want the 100% on the exam and you're so stressed out about that it slips out of your hand, you know, or you want the girl to like you so much and then, you know, she doesn't like you, you know.
Yeah.
Kind of, you know, not to play it cool about everything, you know, you want to like show that you're ambitious and, but, you know, just being open, that you do the best you can. Life may have its own path, but whatever your personal philosophy is, and just being open and enthusiastic to what life has to offer.
Beautiful. That was that was amazing. I'm lost
Oh,
for words. I wish, yeah, I really hope this message gets across to as many, especially freshman, sophomore students who are unsure of what they want to do and, you know, super stressed out, especially during these times. I think these advices are, yeah, having sort of a vague direction of where you want to go, but at the same time being open and flexible to all kinds of experiences is definitely going to open new doors. And that new contacts that you make, the connections that you make and network that you build over time is going to help you in the long run. So I hope everyone can, take a long-term vision as well, on top of everything that Étienne has said.
Vous abonnez et vous likez la page TAKAGAI.
Yeah, voila, perfect.
I don't know if I got to work on it, but
yeah, for next time. But until then, guys, take care. Stay healthy. Ciao.
Big hug, Taka.